The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode. We are gaveling in our project delivery workshop. It is a pleasure to speak with you all at the California Transportation Commission project delivery workshop this morning. Douglas, could you please read the roll and address what may happen if people are having electric connection and Wi-Fi connection issues with our meetings today at the workshop and CTC?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll call the roll first. Commissioner Alvarado. Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Eager.
Here.
Commissioner Grisby. Commissioner Guardino. Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni. Chair Norton.
Present.
Senator Newman. Assemblymember Friedman. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much.
And we wanted to let folks know if you're having power issues, there is an option to call into the meeting. There is information on the front page of the agenda with information to call in. There's also in the help box on this webinar, there is some information for call-in information as well. If you want to note that down, just in case you're in that zone that may lose power, you'll have the ability to call in at any given time to take the place of being on the webinar through your laptop or through your computer.
Fantastic. And with that, we have a very full agenda today. And so I'd like to introduce Tim Sobelman, the Commission's Chief Engineer, to lead us through the safety and speed management portion of this workshop.
Thank you, Chair Norton. And good morning, Commissioners. We scheduled a PD workshop today, or project delivery workshop today, to facilitate an open discussion with Commissioners on a few important topics. We were hoping to have a face-to-face workshop today, but unfortunately didn't work out. And so due to the fact we were fully virtual, we had to restrict the duration. So we'll be, just to go over the overall workshop, the workshop will be in two parts. And as Chair Norton said, the first part will be on safety and speed management. And the second part will be on a few project delivery topics, namely AB 1282 resolutions and necessity and alternative delivery methods. So unless there are other questions, we do have a full agenda. And I'd like to get right to the workshop. Are there any other questions? Okay.
No.
Up first, we have Rachel Carpenter, the Caltrans Chief Safety Engineer. And I'll turn it over to Rachel to start their presentation and allow her group of panel members to introduce themselves. Rachel, you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much, Tim, and good morning, Commissioners. It is fantastic to be with you again. My name is Rachel Carpenter, and I, as Tim said, am the Chief Safety Officer at Caltrans. And I want to first thank you for prioritizing a discussion on speed management and safety. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today, along with my colleagues from the California Office of Traffic Safety, the California Highway Patrol, and the Department of Motor Vehicles about the work that we've collectively doing around safety and speed management on California's roadways. So specifically, we're going to highlight the actions that we are taking to reduce fatalities and serious injuries on California's roadways, from engineering to education, as well as the enforcement perspective. With that, I would like to turn it over for a quick round of introductions. So I am fortunate to be joined by Nagi Paladaga. Nagi, go ahead and introduce yourself, please. Tim, can you confirm that we do have participants from DMV and CHP with us, as well as Nagi? I'm not.
Hi, Rachel. This is Doug, the Commission Clerk. I just want to let you know, Nagi is on. We were not aware she was speaking, so we'll give her the access. But you do have the DMV folks on as well, and Office of Traffic Safety.
Fantastic. Well, to keep things brief, I'll just go ahead and introduce Nagi while things are getting set. Nagi is our office chief over strategic safety and implementation and works with me in the Division of Safety Programs. Dave Doucette, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, Chair Norton, Commissioners. My name is Dave Doucette. I'm the Deputy Director, California Office of Traffic Safety. We are a small office within the CalSTA family. Our primary function is to administer the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Behavioral Traffic Safety Grant Program. So thank you and good morning. I'll turn it over to Captain Jones, California Highway Patrol.
Good morning, Eric Jones from the CHP. I'm going to be the new commander of our research and planning section starting September 1st. The CHP provides uniform traffic enforcement and other law enforcement services statewide. The mission of the CHP is to provide the highest level of safety, service, and security. And our vision is to be a trusted leader in law enforcement, ensuring California is the safest place to live, work, and travel. As far as research and planning section goes, we're responsible for some of our speed enforcement policies, our radar LiDAR program, and a variety of traffic safety grants, some of which are supplied by the Office of Traffic Safety. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next presenter.
Good morning, I'm Marina Smith. I am the Unit Manager of Driver's License Policy Unit in Licensing Operation Division with the Department of Motor Vehicles. Our area deals with policies, procedures, legislation, and regulations as related to driver's license and identification cards. And I'm also joined today by a colleague, Agustin. If you want to go ahead and present yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Marina. My name is Agustin Ceja Huerta. Like Marina said, I'm a manager with the Licensing Operation Division in Policy and Programs branch. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for the round of introductions. I think with that, we can go ahead and get started. So next slide. So I want to provide a brief overview of what we're going to be covering today. First, we'll go through traffic safety trends in California. So I will present some data related to the rise in fatalities and serious injuries and the role that unsafe speed plays in crashes. Then I'll talk through our new safety paradigm. I'll discuss specifically our efforts as a state to pivot our new approach on traffic safety. My Caltrans colleague Nagi will highlight some specific Caltrans actions underway related to speed management, as well as pedestrians and bicyclists. Then we'll talk through public education, and our OTS partners will highlight their recent public education campaign about the dangers of speeding. Then we'll go through enforcement, and CHP will discuss speed enforcement. And finally, we'll talk about driver education, and DMV will highlight their initiatives on speed management from a driver education perspective. Then we'll finish by talking through some next steps that each of our departments are taking. One of the key takeaways that I hope to convey is really the multi-pronged and collaborative efforts that are underway to implement solutions to speeding-related fatalities and serious injuries on California's roadways. Next slide. In California, safety has always been our top priority, but our numbers have been trending in the wrong direction for some time now. Every year, about 3,600 individuals die on California's transportation system, which includes all public roads, so both on and off the state highway system. That averages about 10 deaths per day, and about 3 of those are our most vulnerable road users. Those are people who walk and bike. We can't normalize this. We need to do better. We need to do things differently, and now we are. Our shift to a new approach began last year as we critically reevaluated our old approach to traffic safety and came up with some improvements. From 2020, our data is still provisional, and the CHP will elaborate a bit further on that. Next slide. So this chart shows total fatalities on California's public roads. Pedestrian fatalities are the light portion of the bars, and fatalities for all other modes are shown in the dark portion of the bar. The red trend line tracks the percentage of fatalities that's pedestrian over time. And as you can see, the pedestrian percentage of total fatalities is on the rise. And this far outpaces the pedestrian mode share, making this an increasingly disproportionate safety impact for California's pedestrians. So for example, if we look at the 2012 data, according to the California Household Travel Survey, pedestrian trips made up about 16% of total trips in the state, yet pedestrian fatalities consume nearly 25% of total fatalities. About 10 lives are lost each day on California's public roads on and off the state highway system. And 3 out of 10 of those are our most vulnerable road users. Those are people who walk and bike. Next slide. So this slide demonstrates how extensive the problem of speeding is across the state. In California, unsafe speed is the 3rd leading cause of fatalities and serious injuries. So for fatalities and serious injuries from 2008 to 2017, unsafe speed was the 3rd highest cause, contributing to over 23,000 deaths. That's why the partnership that we have between Caltrans, CHP, and OTS focusing on engineering, enforcement, and education really is critical in addressing this problem. I do just want to note that unsafe speed isn't just limited to exceeding the posted speed limit. So it can include driving faster than conditions allow. So for example, if 2 vehicles crash on the freeway, but are below the posted speed of 65 miles per hour and the crash, it could still be coded as unsafe speed related to crash if they were traveling at a speed that was unsafe for the conditions. So for example, taking into account the weather, visibility, or traffic. Next slide. The human body is vulnerable, and that's what this graph shows. People are unlikely to survive an uncushioned impact at a speed of more than about 20 miles per hour. As you can see here, even relatively low speeds can kill or seriously injure a pedestrian unless the vehicle and the road environment take into account this physical vulnerability of all road users. So what you can see here is that as impact speed increases, so does fatality risk. And that's consistent across all modes and across all crash types. Next slide. This story is not unique to California, though. For more than 2 decades, speeding has been involved in approximately 1/3 of all motor vehicle fatalities across the nation. So speeding is a safety problem for all users. It endangers not only the life of the speeder, but of all of the people on the road around them. Additionally, the risk of fatalities and serious injuries increase, as we just discussed, as vehicle speeds increase. So in other words, the faster a car is going when it crashes, the more likely that the crash will result in death or serious injury. Next slide. So in California, we are pursuing a paradigm shift in safety, and this is a direct result of our rising number of deaths and serious injuries. We realized that if we wanted to change our numbers, if we wanted to reduce death and serious injury to 0, we needed to change the way we do things to improve it. So our goal is to move the needle in the right direction to reduce fatal and serious injuries to 0. Next slide. The emphasis on speed management and safety, though, is not new. In fact, there was legislation introduced in 2018 that directed California to examine it more closely. In 2018, Assembly Bill 2363, authored by Assemblymember Laura Friedman, directed the California State Transportation Agency, or CalSTA, to convene a task force to investigate speed limit setting methodology, to explore ways to reduce fatalities and serious injuries related to speed across the state. So after a 9-month-long process of research and discussion with traffic safety practitioners, advocacy groups, local state officials from really across the state, CalSTA delivered a final report to the legislature in January of 2020. And the report contained findings and recommendations for consideration across several areas. Those included engineering, education, and enforcement. So this report is the original source of many of our current speeding and safety and speed management efforts that we're going to be highlighting today. Furthermore, many of the recommendations have been incorporated into our strategic highway safety plan, which is just making sure that we continue to make progress on them and continue to report. So CalSTRA directed its departments to begin implementing the report's recommendations. And since the report was released, Caltrans, OTS, CHP, and DMV have been working to implement those recommendations. Next slide. So to reach this goal, California is taking action and collaborating on safety and speed management across our departments. Caltrans, the Office of Traffic Safety, DMV, CHP are all pursuing important initiatives that we're going to discuss today. So I want to highlight the collaborative efforts underway to implement solutions to speeding-related fatal and serious injuries. And what you'll see on the following slides is that we're tackling this urgent problem from multiple perspectives: engineering, education, and enforcement. And that's what it's going to take to get us to zero. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to my Caltrans colleague, Nagi, to provide a bit of a summary of what we're doing related to engineering at Caltrans. Nagi?
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. Nagi Pagadola here. I'll start off things for Caltrans by providing an update on Caltrans's engineering related interventions related to safety and speed management. I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo. Next slide, please. One of California's highest level guiding document is the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, SHSP. And SHSP is a statewide data-driven traffic safety plan that coordinates the efforts of a wide range of organizations to reduce traffic accident fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads. In coordination with federal, state, local, and private sector safety stakeholders, the SHSP establishes goals, objectives, and challenge areas. California's SHSP includes 16 challenge areas on which to focus resources and efforts. Within those 16, I'm going to focus on 3 high priority actions based on the challenge areas circled in red here. These are speed management, aggressive driving, bicyclists, and pedestrians. These areas represent a large percentage of fatalities and serious injuries, and thus deserve extra attention in order to start significantly reducing deaths and serious injuries. These high priority areas will have more detailed and frequent updates and analysis to support action development in the SHSP. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can we go back one slide? Okay. The first high priority challenge area I'm going to discuss is the speed management, aggressive driving. Rachel has already covered the alarming statistics earlier, which depict the correlation between unsafe speed and increased risk in fatalities and serious injuries. Now I'll discuss the actions underway to address this challenge. The following actions are currently underway to address speed management, aggressive driving related crashes. So the first one is develop speed monitoring program. We are working to develop a new speeding related traffic safety monitoring pilot program focused on reducing fatalities and serious injuries that are speeding related, so that we can truly expand our focus on addressing speed and implementing speed management. Next bullet, please. Implement a new roadway-based context-sensitive approach to establish speed limits. One of the new SHSP action items related to speed management is a research project that launched earlier this year. In CalSTR's Zero Traffic Fatalities report, one of the key recommendations was to develop and implement a new roadway-based context-sensitive approach to establish speed limits that prioritizes the safety of all road users. As the first step, Caltrans initiated a research project that represents the first step towards developing a safe system approach to setting speed limits in California and replacing the outdated 85th percentile methodology and moving away from using driver behavior entirely to set speeds. The next bullet, please. Implement guidance from state and federal research. Caltrans has also been monitoring the NCHRP research project development of a posted speed limit setting procedure and tool for over a year. The results have been released and we are currently evaluating them and considering how best to incorporate them. Next bullet, please. As you may know, the national standard for setting speed limits is based on the 85th percentile of existing speeds, which historically focused on vehicle traffic. Developing a new approach to setting speed limits based on safe system principles will take time. In the meantime, we are exploring options to increase flexibility to account for all users in the area with the current framework for setting speed limits. Next bullet, please. Caltrans has formed an internal working group that is currently developing traffic calming guidance. The working group is drafting guidance that is specific to California and is also coordinating with the FHWA. Part of this effort will be laying out the needs or criteria for traffic calming interventions. Next slide, please. Pedestrians and bicyclists are our most vulnerable road users, and our guiding principle to integrate equity relates to this challenge area. Integrating equity means taking into account any historical, present day, and systemic biases so that safety is improved for all groups, but particularly the most vulnerable and traditionally undeserved populations. Institutionalizing equity includes embracing the safe system principle that safety must be proactive. We must proactively address the inequities built into the current transportation system to keep vulnerable members of the community safe. We need to ensure safe and fair transportation options for everyone. We now require that equity is addressed within the development and implementation of all actions in the SHSP. In addition, we developed a working definition of equity for use in the SHSP as part of a collaborative process with our safety partners. We have clearly defined equity in the SHSP and have included it throughout the emphasis areas and actions. Next slide, please. Pedestrians account on an average 25% of statewide fatalities and serious injuries. This is based on an average from 2011 to 2020. Since 2010, pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries have increased 48%. The following actions are currently underway to address pedestrian-related crashes. Establish a methodology for developing a high injury network for pedestrians and bicyclists. Develop quick builds and demonstration project guidance to advance complete streets elements for multimodal user safety. Develop pedestrian count models to improve volume data and accurately predict pedestrian-related crashes. Next slide, please. Since 2010, bicyclist fatalities and serious injuries have increased 26%, with fatalities in particular increasing by 61%. We will be looking to update the California Complete Intersections Guide to provide current design guidance to Caltrans and local staff, proactive bicyclist system safety improvement program. We have developed a bicyclist hotspot safety improvement program. And lastly, I would like to add that all actions proposed must include an explanation of how they would address equity. Next slide, please. I'd like to conclude with highlighting Caltrans' safety project evaluation process. Caltrans has an annual process that identifies safety projects and presents before and after data analysis. The Highway Safety Improvement Program annual report provides a list of completed safety projects for the SHS, State Highway System, local roads, and Railway Highway Grade Crossing Program. California completes this analysis every year. The project list is based on the calendar year, that is 4 years prior to the report year, to capture 3 complete years of crash data and after project completion. The HCIP branch analyzes safety projects by using 3 years of crash data before and 3 years of crash data after the safety project completion to determine the benefit cost ratio. This is used to analyze overall project effectiveness. For the 2020 HCIP annual report, the SHS has 29 safety projects completed in 2016. 51% of the projects had positive results. The HCIP branch will continue to use crashes to perform their before-after analysis on safety projects. This concludes Caltrans' portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to the Office of Traffic Safety to talk about the recent campaign to address high-speed crashes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nagi. Before we jump into the Office of Traffic Safety, I just want to see if there are any questions that we can address from the commissioners before we move on.
Yes, we do have some questions, and I just wanted to remark about the lamentable statistics that you presented today. They're shocking. We have some public comment, which we'll take first, and then we have comments from commissioners, and I have a question for myself. So, Justin, could you please read the written comment and open the public comment?
Thank you, Chair Norton. The first comment came in during the first presentation from Bruce Abernathy. He asks, do you have data on bicycle collisions and fatalities, or are these included in the pedestrian numbers?
Thank you so much for your question. We do keep, the patrol can probably go into more specifics, but we do collect crash data specific to bicyclists. That is a distinctly different data set than that data set for pedestrians. If you do want to explore our Strategic Highway Safety Plan website off of the Caltrans main page, we do have a dashboard that is publicly available that you can explore the specifics of crashes related to bicyclists. And you're welcome to follow up with me, and I can provide that link to you directly.
Thank you.
Thank you. A second written comment came in during the second presentation, also from Bruce Abernathy. He writes, I'm hoping that speed management will include resolving the traffic obstruction problem, such as people driving much slower than safe on highways. This causes other drivers to make numerous lane changes, some of them unsafe. Thank you. And that concludes all public comment that we've received. I see no attendees with their hands raised at this time. So thank you.
Okay. We have commissioners, and I did want to open it to our Executive Director, Mitch Weiss, who has a question about slide 18.
Sure, just real quick. Slide 18 had some percentages, and percentages of what? I didn't quite understand.
Perhaps we could go back to slide 18.
Yep.
Certainly. So I can walk you through what we've been doing is taking some steps and overlaying equity-related data sets and safety crash data sets, and starting to explore some, like Chair Norton said, surprising statistics. What you see here is that an African-American pedestrian in California on all public roads is 62% more likely to be killed in a crash than a white pedestrian. This is just one example of some of the alarming statistics that we're discovering. This is a preliminary analysis that we've done, and we too were quite surprised by some of these findings, and so we are doing a deeper dive. But we wanted to share at least this one with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Inman? You're on mute.
I could hear myself. I have several questions. Thank you for the presentation. But to stay on this slide, refresh my memory. So 62% of our pedestrian crashes involve an African American, yet what percent of our population does our African American community represent? Way, way smaller, right?
Yeah, Commissioner, this is kind of a complicated graphic and we're trying to figure out how to best describe it. And I can walk you through because I think there's a little bit of a nuance that wasn't quite captured. So what this does is it looks at sort of white pedestrians as your baseline, then compares different racial groups. So what we're saying here is that a African-American pedestrian is 62% more likely than a white pedestrian to be killed in a crash as a pedestrian. So this does not include the breakdown by population. And that's one of the things that we are diving into more and exploring further. So this is really just a preliminary analysis, but like you pointed out, really helpfully, we need to do additional overlays, population and whatnot, to make sure that we're telling the complete story.
Yeah, I think we need to peel that onion to really see. I mean, obviously, that is just heartbreaking, but I think we need to understand as we look for solution sets. So I would just encourage you. Back to my bigger questions. On your first slide, one of the first slides, it said that illegal turns, I think, had the most fatalities of any of them. Was that correct?
So perhaps we could go, I think you're probably referring to slide 5. If we could go back to slide 5, please. Thank you so much. So I think this is probably the slide you're referring to, and I am going to ask the patrol to chime in because they are our experts on primary collision factors. Chief Jones, do you happen to be there?
Yeah, hey, this is Eric. So what you're looking at here on the slide, it looks like the primary collision factors and improper turning. When you think about improper turning as part of a crash, that's usually somebody who's run off the roadway. So if you think of somebody traveling straight on a roadway, the roadway comes into a curve, maybe they were unable to safely navigate that curve, they ran off the roadway, that might be coded as an improper turning movement.
Well, I was just wondering because as I look at that, I think of left turns and people turning where they're not supposed to turn. I mean, it's one thing to lose control and not be able to navigate a turn or a curve, but if it is indeed we're turning, I mean, it seems to me like there might be an area there where collectively either we just say you can't turn here and prohibit those turns. I would be real interested in drilling down on that to see if there was something, because to me that might be a relatively quick fix that we could do if we could find that we have 500 places where people are turning left and it's not a safe place to turn left. And so we're going to have to find another traffic pattern to let those people make 2 right turns or 3 right turns, whatever they need to do. But anyway, that one jumped out at me. I was not expecting, I thought the drug impaired. Where's texting on this slide? Distracted driving, I don't see jumping out at me. And I know that that's a huge growing issue for all of us.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So on improper turning, I do know that violation is specific to the code 22107, which does have to do with making the improper turning movement. There's several other vehicle codes. You alluded to left turns, right turns, turns from improper positions. Those have separate vehicle codes. So this one here, 22107, is a very common primary collision factor. It usually has to do with people being unable to navigate a turn properly, like usually a curved roadway when they come off the roadway. As far as
related, maybe, so that's kind of tied to the end speed. If I can't turn off a roadway, maybe it's because I'm going too fast at that to make that turn, right?
And it is common that you may see unsafe turning movement coupled with an associated factor of unsafe speed, maybe, the actual cause of the crash was leaving the roadway, making that unsafe turning movement, but part of the contributing factor could be the vehicle's speed was unsafe.
Okay, well, my point is that's the number one. If I look at this, that's the leading one, not by a lot, but at least it is. So we ought to see what collectively we can do to, reduce that number. So.
Yes.
And Commissioner, if I can just add before we move on, I mentioned our new paradigm in safety, and I think what we're trying to do is really take a hard look at data like this and develop our safety programs that are specifically addressing the problems that we see on our roads. So we have for a long time had the same set of safety programs monitoring our network, and we're now realizing that we're seeing other primary collision factors that are really taking a large share of our fatal and serious injuries. And so rest assured, what we're doing is trying to look at the data and developing our programs so that we can implement those quick fixes like you mentioned.
Okay. Where's the distracted driving on this chart?
Commissioner, I don't see it on here. One of kind of the complicated factors of crash investigation is proving somebody may have been using a distracting device at the time. So usually people who may have been texting at the time of the crash and they rear end somebody, they're probably not going to freely admit to the fact that they were texting while driving. So that texting while driving, talking on the phone, being distracted, that's probably an undercounted statistic, and it's very difficult to find.
Yeah.
Well, our friends at the Auto Club think it's a huge issue.
Right.
And
Thank you, Commissioner Inman. I recognize Commissioner Liu, and after Commissioner Liu, Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, the mute button is working kind of slow today. Sorry about that. This is a very important presentation, very fascinating information. And I think it's, the slide that shows that African Americans are 62% more likely to be killed in a pedestrian accident than whites is a really important tracking metric for our equity efforts. And I would just hope, and maybe Rachel, you can help with us, that if this is a preliminary type analysis, that you continue to work on it and make it the best that it can be, so that we can use it to track our progress on equity issues over time. And I hope staff would pay attention to this and incorporate it into our equity discussions and efforts. It's pretty tragic. And I also know that African Americans have less access to a car than whites do too. So you've kind of, they're vulnerable in a couple of ways. They might not have any other option than to walk, and then they're more likely to be hit by cars. I was wondering if there have been any studies on this issue of how congestion impacts driver behavior, because it seems to me that there develops a culture of super aggressive driving when traffic's really bad. I mean, people drive like maniacs, and it's just like, oh, it's okay, right? It's like everyone's kind of it's like it's survival of the fittest in terms of crazy driving. And I also think that maybe it's more likely that people, ride bikes or walk when you have gridlock. And so it's kind of a dual problem. Have you taken a look at that issue? Has there been any work on how congestion impacts driver behavior and safety?
Thanks for the question. I want to start by just thanking you for encouraging us to continue this exploration into the safety and equity data sets. I think I agree completely, as does our director, that this is a huge issue that we need to be studying thoroughly, and then developing programs to give a lift to those communities. We are coordinating closely with our partners at Caltrans and Planning, who are developing an equity index, as you may know. So rest assured, I don't think this is the first time that you'll be seeing data sets like this, and we will continue to explore them with rigor. I don't know offhand any specific studies that look at sort of safety behavior as it relates to congestion. I will jot that down and follow up, through proper channels to see if we can pull anything. I do think, though, that you make a good point, and one we're especially aware of at the department, in that we need to pursue a shift in the safety culture we have in California and in this country. It is going to, thinking about safety in a different way is going to require all of us working together. As Nagi shared, being proactive, looking at inherent inequities that exist. So I think a facet of that is behavior as it relates to congestion, but there's just sort of this larger safety culture need that we have. People need to take the responsibility of traveling very seriously.
Yeah, and my personal approach is, I go into Zen mode. It's like everything's going to be all right. It's all going to work out. I'm going to put on a podcast. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to get to where I'm going, and I'm not going to let all these idiot drivers drive me crazy, because if you allow yourself to get irritated and then respond aggressively to bad driving, you're just making the whole thing worse. So it's sort of a mindset thing, and I don't know how we get to it, but the data on the 48% increase in pedestrian fatalities since 2010. That is something that should be bold headlines across everything too. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Commissioner Kehoe, we'll call on you next, and then Commissioner Davis.
Thanks, Hillary. I just think this presentation is terrific, long overdue, lots of good information. So Ms. Carpenter, you're doing the right thing. And I want to, point out that Assemblymember Laura Friedman's done a great job in moving the policy perspective to a different place, and Director Omashakan, who has been talking about safety in our system since he first arrived. So, it's to prioritize safety. I don't know if it comes before traffic throughput or is just moving up the ranks closer to traffic throughput, but that is an enormous change in our public policy and in enforcement and design thinking, because as a city council member in the 1990s, when we asked why there should be 3 lanes in each direction at a suburban intersection, along with a left-hand turn lane and a right-hand turn lane, you're talking about a couple of 100 yards to cross the street. So I'm guessing, I don't really know, but it's a hell of a long way. And it's a space factor. It's prioritizing cars over people. It's it deadens the neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. We know all the issues. So that change is so important. And I got a couple of questions. The numbers that we're seeing here, are these statistics only pertain to are there local streets in here too? Okay, so bicycle and pedestrian accidents are somehow or other, I know it's complicated, they're included in these numbers.
That's correct. When we're looking at data for all public roads, so that's both on and off the state highway system.
Good. I'm glad you're doing all this. Can you talk a little bit more about how either this information or your new programming and priorities are going to be shared with local law enforcement, engineering departments, and traffic departments at the local, the county, and the city level?
Certainly. I do just want to mention we have a few more slides to get through from other departments. So once you're done with this set of questions, we have lots of other great information to share. Before I answer your questions too, you make a huge, a really important point of sort of the inherent difference between prioritizing for throughput and capacity versus safety. And there are some inherent conflicts, especially as it relates to pedestrian and bicyclist safety. As a department, safety is our highest priority. And so we are examining our past highway investment strategies and how they might need to be tweaked to make sure that we are prioritizing the safety of our road users, because that is number one for the department. I think as the state has moved away from level of service to vehicle miles traveled, we have a lot of great pieces in place to help us really, provide for our number one priority. We are in the process of trying to communicate out our new programs, our new paradigm in safety through various presentations with national groups, as well as through our strategic highway safety plan. That is a plan that includes about 400 stakeholders, and that's just from California. So local agencies, advocates, practitioners of all sorts. So we do a lot of information sharing through that platform. We're also trying to share a safety story in each of our Caltrans mile marker publications, as well as coordinating closely with our sister agencies, CHP, DMV, and OTS. So that's just a quick answer, but we're trying to share our new safety paradigm and the hype and the hopes that it takes on with local agencies also.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Commissioner Davis, and then I have some questions, and I know we'll move on because we have lots of other presentations today. Commissioner Davis, you're muted.
Thank you for the presentation and the information, and it just goes to show how much work there still is to be done to get this right. I know the Federal Highway Administration incorporates work zone fatalities into pedestrian deaths, so I'm assuming that's the same here. But I don't want to. But is that's probably where that number's sort of buried.
That's true. We do look at work zones separately, and I can share some statistics on that, after this presentation for you.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. And then the second piece is just Caltrans is sort of even before the Jersey barriers or the K-rail or the cones. In my mind, those CHP officers that are out there are sort of the first line of defense for the tradesmen and women that are working on these projects, which are almost all primarily night jobs, which even makes them even more dangerous. And so how much input does Caltrans take from the CHP as you're working on designing these safety zones, safety zone suggestions? I mean, what's that partnership? How's that dialogue work? And how are we using our CHP officers who are, the professionals that are at the front line to try to make these work zones safer, and then separately, what are we going to do about trying to suggest even slower speed limits going through these work zones, which seems to work in some other places, and I know people don't like it, and it makes them frustrated, and it might even make them angry, but it will allow, as I said, these tradesmen, women and tradesmen to go home at the end of their shift. And thanks again for the presentation.
Well, Commissioner Davis, thank you. And on behalf of Caltrans, the whole commission, we are so excited that you are interested in talking to us about speed management and safety. So thank you. As you know, we've had a rash of contractor fatalities, and it's unacceptable. We need, and we think we are starting to make some changes, partly by working with industry. To answer your question, we coordinate closely with the patrol and try to get enforcement on our work zones as resources allow. From the Caltrans perspective, though, what we are trying to do, and as part of our new safety paradigm, is really trying to create work zones in a way that are sort of self-enforcing, that won't allow the mistakes that we know that drivers will make to become fatalities and serious injuries. So how can we build in horizontal and vertical separation that protects those, our contractors, our staff who are most vulnerable on our roadways. So we are trying to build in, positive protection, different types of devices that will not allow the mistakes that inevitably will occur, to become fatal and serious injuries. Captain Jones, would you like to chime in, from the patrol's perspective on speed enforcement or speeding through work zones?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I know our officers when they go out to we call them cozy details. The details where they go out and they they either enforce speed or they help make sure that people slow down through work zones. They do write citations. They do, if they see something that they think is unsafe about the closure, I know they'll typically talk with the head Caltrans engineer at the scene to make adjustments to make sure that things are, maybe they need a larger taper, maybe they need to change the taper in a way, but I know they will work locally with the Caltrans engineer at the scene to make sure that the roadway is safe as possible during construction.
Yeah.
Well, we're more than willing to offer up the assistance of our National Health and Safety Fund. If you're looking for input, we've got a whole division of professionals that would be more than willing and love to engage in the discussion on work zone safety. And we can coordinate offline, or you can get all my information from Mitch or our executive director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had two questions. One was issues about you've talked about these fatalities over time, and they're horrible. I was wondering if you have some hot spot so that we can essentially mapping so that we can start, as we're looking at the active transportation funding and others, we can start really targeting or complete streets targeting funding towards addressing some of these hot spots as they come. And then the other is, as I've been driving around and taking transit, one of the biggest concerns I have is the difference in the speed of lanes on a particular freeway. So you've got one lane that may be at 0 because either the exit has backed up or the transition to another freeway. And so you're getting a lot of very unsafe situations where getting off to another freeway is really impossible, has a very different speed, and there's no signage that's saying like slow down or prepare. We can track this, and so you're getting people who are trying to get off into the next lane to avoid hitting the others, and are then going into 75-degree lane or 75 miles an hour lanes. And that's when crashes are happening. And so I just wanted to know if you're looking how you can maybe address some of the signage issues about these transitions that have wildly different speeds and are really seeming to be the basis of a lot of fatalities and really bad crashes.
Those are two fantastic questions, and I'll try to address them quickly. So the first is, your first question was related to looking at hotspots. We do have, and for years, the department has really excelled at looking at high collision concentration locations or hotspots, as we refer to them. So we do map those locations, and we do have a number of safety programs that look at sort of, in a reactive way where those crashes occur. That dashboard I mentioned earlier can be made available to you, so you can go in and you can see, you can filter the data. So I'll make sure to follow up with you about that. The other question you had was related to the speed differential between lanes, on higher speed facilities. Yes, that is a huge problem, and it's with speed differentials come safety problems. So as you pointed out, if you have one lane where the operating speed is very low versus one where there's 70 miles per hour, that can create safety challenges. What we have done, I guess my response is twofold. So we have begun a pilot program in a few of our districts where we've actually put overhead signs per in individual lanes to display the operating speed, so that as a driver you have information then right in front of you to know what the speeds are of various lanes. So I think we are in the process of seeing that pilot through, doing evaluation. Perhaps that would be used more widely across the state, depending on the outcome of our evaluation. Second, though, and I think perhaps more importantly, speed management is one of our priority areas, because we know how important it is. As speed increases, so does fatality risk, no matter what mode, no matter what crash type. So what I'm encouraging us to do as a department and working with others is really to take a few steps back and say, okay, how can we address speed management on this section of roadway, for example, if we know that there are continually challenges with speed differentials between lanes? How can we take 3 steps back and say, how do we address speeding as a as a challenge on this roadway, instead of hoping that individuals make good choices? How can we build into the system sort of a self-enforcing roadway?
Very well, very excellent. I know we've got lots more in this presentation, so I'll let us move on, but thank you for taking these very specific questions, because this is a big topic for CTC, and one we'll talk about as we're working in our equity advisory committees and maybe task forces related to safety, specifically with Caltrans. So thank you very much.
Good morning again.
With that, thank you so much. And Dave, we have Dave Doucette here with the Office of Traffic Safety. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. And thanks for the partnership with Caltrans. This is really a great opportunity for OTS, and I appreciate the time to present here. And I'll keep my presentation relatively quick. I think I have a total of 4 slides. At OTS, our mission is to save lives and reduce injuries, and we do that by changing behavior. Appreciate the comments of Commissioner Liu and bringing up the cultural shifts that need to happen. This is some crazy times that we're in right now, and who wouldn't imagine the numbers of people going over 100 miles an hour in their cars? It's just been a real tough situation out there. Our primary responsibility is to educate, and I want to briefly talk about our campaign that we did approximately almost a year ago, and then briefly talk about what we're going to be doing in the future. So thank you. The next slide there is our Slow the Fast Down campaign that we put out there. Everybody saw it. It was a very, very low budget campaign. As you can see, $500,000 over a 2-week period in November, focusing on the groups and hitting the right media markets. Very honestly, though, 500,000 doesn't go very far. It's just really, it's just a pennies to this, what needs to happen in the campaigns that we need to do. So we, if you could go to the next slide real quick, I just want to share a couple of the key things that part of the Slow the Fast Down campaign. You're familiar with the signage. We went after billboards, the apps, and social media is really where this could take off for us. And because, again, the funding was minimal. If you can go to the next slide as well. So we did some, this is really a grassroots effort too. We did some prize drawings through our media partners that we work with to where we could get people to try to create some activity for this campaign. And that's really what we saw and what we we're proud to deliver back in November of last year. If you can go to the last slide that I have. And then we also did, again, some yard signage as part of the marketing campaign, various things that we all know. Again, that's briefly what we did last year. What I'm excited to talk about, and I'll make this really brief because I know we're limited on time, is through the leadership of the CalSTA agencies, our directors formed together to create a media partnership that we are about to kick off in October. We are putting our resources together along with Caltrans resources through an RFP, through a new marketing contract, and we are going to come out with a very bold campaign that's going to be much more than the 500,000 that you saw. And it's also going to address other behavioral issues, impaired driving, texting, everything that we do at the Office of Traffic Safety. So we're excited about that. I wish I could share more. It's still in development with our marketing firm, but you can anticipate some bold campaigns coming out there. And it's really our effort to change behavior and to educate the drivers in California, ultimately to save lives and reduce injuries throughout the state. We lose too many people each and every day, and we need to make that change, and we need everybody's collaboration. And again, thank you to Caltrans and to the Highway Patrol and DMV for the partnership. So with that, think moving along, we're going to turn it over to Captain Eric Jones with the California Highway Patrol.
Thank you very much, Captain Jones. Have we been able to reach Captain Jones and his equipment presentation?
Chair, we can see he's on and his mic is open, but we're not hearing him.
Okay.
Yes. Again,
Wonderful.
Eric Jones, CHP. I was fortunate enough to be selected as our new research and planning section commander effective September 1. If you could go to our next slide. Oh.
Captain Jones, we've lost you again.
Sir Norton, I can, if you'd like, I can present for the patrol if needed.
That would be fine, or I still hear him, but would like to make sure that he hears us and knows he's on the way. Is it possible that you could run his presentation, or the presentation is moving fine?
I believe that it is the CTC staff who's running the slide deck. So if
yes, why don't you progress and make the presentation, and he can add anything at the end when his mic seems to be working.
Certainly, Captain Jones, are you there? If not, I will go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Well, as you may know, the patrol was created in 1929, and really the purpose is to provide uniform traffic enforcement and other law enforcement services statewide. So the mission of the patrol is to provide the highest level of safety, service, and security. And the vision really is to be a trusted leader in law enforcement to ensure that California is the safest place to live, work, and travel. Captain Jones is the research and planning section chief, and he is responsible for a variety of programs, including enforcement policies, grants, and LiDAR and radar. So with that, the CHP does conduct radar and speed enforcement, LiDAR speed enforcement operations statewide on a daily basis. So these operations really do help reduce excessive speeds, especially in problematic areas. So traffic radar LiDAR devices are extremely accurate and provide reliable speed data to trained operators. So the patrol officers must be certified to use the radar and LiDAR, which involves completing a comprehensive training course. For radar certification, there are 24 hours of training, equipment, theory of operations, tracking, confirmation processes. And for LiDAR, it's an 8-hour certification. The CHP really is committed to providing public education, warning around the dangers of speeding and excessive driving. Let's see, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Hopefully you
can hear me now.
We can.
Captain Jones, I've just nearly completed the first slide. Please go ahead and take over. I was just explaining the certification process for LiDAR and radar.
I am so sorry about that. I appear to have lost my connection intermittently, and now I'm back. Thank you very much, Rachel, for over the slides. Just very briefly on the slides, I'm sure you probably covered this, but you can see, on the left there, one of our officers issuing a citation for a speed of over 100 miles. In the middle there, you can see one of our units on a traffic stop, publicized, public outreach about the dangers of speeding and aggressive driving and other traffic safety, hazards is something that we firmly believe in. And then on the right there, you can see one of our officers in partnership with Caltrans through one of the enhanced safety zones. It sounds like we already covered this slide. We can move to the next one.
Wow.
Yeah, so on this slide, what you can see is in 2020, we had a pretty drastic increase in citations issued for speed over 100 miles an hour. I guess we could speculate on the causes for this. Most would probably say that it has something to do with reduced traffic volumes due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but I would leave that to the researchers and the experts to kind of determine the actual cause. But the one factual thing you can see here is speed over 100 drastically increased, and our officers were out there writing citations to help address that concern. If you'd like to go to the next slide. Yeah, so this slide is about automated speed enforcement, and this topic comes up very frequently. We get asked about automated speed enforcement. And what automated speed enforcement generally consists of is some sort of radar or LiDAR device stationary that measures speed across the roadway and then issues a citation through mail or other means. There's a lot of pros, there's some cons. So we were asked to do a little presentation on automated speed enforcement. Obviously, deploying automated speed enforcement, there's a preventative and a deterrence factor there. Generally deploying things like this could slow down traffic. It's very efficient at writing citations and identifying people who are violating speed laws. But it is currently prohibited by law in California. The California Vehicle Code does not allow for the use of automated speed enforcement devices. One of the kind of challenges with automated speed enforcement is citation responsibility issues. Generally in California, the person driving the vehicle is responsible for committing the violation. When you have things like automated speed enforcement devices, that makes it more complicated to determine who's actually driving the vehicle. And, some states I do know they make the vehicle owner liable for that. And then there's always public perception, either positive or negative, that goes along with automated speed enforcement, and it's certainly a consideration. I think that may conclude my slides. And again, thank you so much to Rachel for helping me out there while I lost connection at the worst possible time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello,
I do
everyone.
just have one additional presenter from DMV. So go ahead, Augustine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Marina and I will be presenting on the methods DMV uses to promote and monitor speed awareness and the possible opportunities to enhance speed awareness. Next slide, please. So each year, DMV receives an average of the following speed-related convictions. We have 480,000 convictions of speeding on the highway, 308,000 basic speed convictions.
So through Department of Motor Vehicles educating drivers opportunities, we have the opportunity to educate these drivers on our testing. So on average, we have 4 speed-related questions that are included in both the commercial and non-commercial, as well as provisional tests. This ensures that they have an understanding of the knowledge-based requirements for speed management. We also have information that's included in the handbooks, both the Parent-Teen Training Handbook as well as the California Driver Handbook. Next slide, please.
Okay, there are various ways that DMV monitors driving behavior. One way DMV specifically monitors a driver's speed behavior is through its Negligent Operator Treatment System program, also known as NOTS. So California has recognized the need to deter the negligent operator of a motor vehicle in order to maintain traffic safety on the highways. The NOTS program is based on negligent operator points and consists of a computer-generated series of warning letters and progressive sanctions against the driving privilege. NOTS programs affect California drivers age 18 and older. Also affects those drivers under the age of 18 if they violate provisional driver probation or suspension. Current law allows DMV to assign negligent operator points against a person's driving privilege for certain traffic offenses to identify the driver as a negligent operator. Violation points vary depending on the seriousness of the offense. For example, a fix-it ticket does not count for any violation points, while a basic speeding ticket counts for 1 violation point. A driving above 100 miles per hour offense counts for 2 violation points. These points are then added to the driver record upon receipt of convictions from the courts. Also, DMV applies negligent operator points for traffic convictions California drivers receive in other states, reported via the problem driver pointer system, also known as PDPS. At that point, DMV determined whether the same violation, if committed in California, would be assigned a negligent operator point count. Points resulting from out-of-state convictions may form the basis or part of the basis for a NOTS action. NOTS actions are imposed by DMV based on the number of points drivers receive within a specified time period. This slide, what this slide shows is the 4 levels of NOTS, levels 1 through number 4. It shows the number of points within a specified time frame to reach each level. It shows the number of drivers annually for each level. At level number 3, the order of suspension and probation, drivers are placed on negligent operator probation for a period of 1 year. During the first 6 months of that probation period, the driver is suspended. At level number 3, during the probation period, the driver is also required to meet the terms and conditions of probation, which requires no additional negligent operator points, no accidents at fault in which the driver is found to be at fault, and no failure to appears. At a level number 4, the suspension can range from a 6-month suspension to a 1-year revocation, followed by probation. And then also in level number 4, a driver can have multiple level number 4 revocations on the driving record. Those drivers in level number 3 and number 4 may request a DMV hearing. During the hearing, hearing officers discuss the driver's seriousness of the violations, plans for improvement, and any corrective measures needed to avoid future violations or accidents. As noted in the previous slide, speeding convictions received by DMV annually, which is speeding, is overwhelmingly the single most common conviction that triggers a NOTS point. Next slide, please. So DMV has identified possible opportunities to enhance speed awareness, such as training new drivers by revising the drive school lesson plan, training of existing drivers by revising the traffic school course guidelines.
We've also determined additional opportunities to make revisions and enhancements. Currently, we would like to enhance drivers' handbooks, so modifying content specific to speeding with an emphasis awareness to our existing language, as well as revising DMV's education and safety website content. So that would consist of us expanding existing content to add additional emphasis on the importance of speed management. In conclusion, DMV has used this opportunity to review and identify areas in which we would potentially enhance our speed management content based on this. However, at this time, there is no identified timeline for these implementations.
Thank you so much, DMV. We just have 2 more slides left that we'll use to wrap up. So next slide, please. In terms of next steps, our departments collectively are taking a number of them. So I'm going to cover these quickly on behalf of all of the departments because I know we're running short on time. So from the patrol's perspective, they are going to be using new LiDAR devices to assist with speed enforcement. And they'll continue stakeholder engagement to promote safe driving and provide public education around the dangers of speeding. Next. From a Caltrans perspective, we are thrilled to be initiating procurement to develop district traffic safety plans. And we're also planning for the development and already are developing a new speeding related monitoring program. OTS is currently developing a coordinated traffic safety campaign to begin next year. We are really excited for the first time to be partnering Caltrans and OTS together on a large traffic safety campaign. And DMV, as you just heard, is currently planning to enhance a number of their resources. So with that, next slide, I just want to thank all of our presenters today for sharing the various efforts that you have related to speed management and safety, and thank the Commission especially for taking on and being interested in this topic. With that, we are happy to take questions or can do that offline if we're short on time.
Well, thank you so much for all of your hard work and these presentations. Justin, do we have any other public comments at this time?
Chair Norton, I do not see any public comment at this time.
Thank you. This is a hugely important issue for CTC, and as we're looking to make sure that we are using our SB1 dollars in the most appropriate ways, one of the most important issues is making sure that we all travel safely as a pedestrian, cyclist, and in all ways that we travel. So we thank you for implementing these steps to make sure that we track this and can address it. And we will be following up on the opportunities to do task forces and others together.
Chair Norton, can I ask a quick question about all those citations over 100 miles per hour?
Yep.
What are the consequences? Do we throw the book at those folks, as my mother would say?
This is Eric again. That's an excellent question. Generally, the actual consequences are obviously left up to the court, but speeds over 100 do usually come with a pretty significant fine and may come with a driver's license suspension.
Maybe they should serve some time. I mean, if I look at that number, I mean, that is just horrific. There's no reason anybody should be at that speed, in my opinion. So I think that's one thing maybe collectively we look at, Chair Norton, to see if that, and I don't know if there's any tie to the rapid increase in pedestrian deaths. They may be in separate, maybe all of those 100 miles an hour citations are on the highway system. But that to me seems like maybe you automatically lose your license. It's not discretionary, or, we need to stop that.
Thank you. That's well noted. Thank you so much, Commissioner Inman. And with that, wonderful comment, and we will move on to the next part of our agenda. Tim?
Thank you. First, I want to thank Rachel and the entire panel for a very informative presentation. We're going to get into the project delivery part of the workshop, and I just need to acknowledge that with the time available, it looks like we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but they're all very important topics. So if we do not get to all the presentations, we will be scheduling another project delivery workshop to cover them. So first up, we have Jeremy Ketchum, Caltrans Assistant Division Chief for Environmental Analysis, to discuss AB 1282.
Thank you. Mr. Ketchum?
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, and Chair Norton. I'm Jeremy Ketchum, Assistant Division Chief of Environmental Analysis at Caltrans. I'm here today to discuss the tools for increasing certainty of permit approval requirements. And okay, my slide is up. I'm not used to the tools here, but okay. I'm here to discuss the tools for increasing certainty of permit approval requirements. I will be focused on providing highlights of the AB 1282 process. The allotted time will provide commissioners an opportunity to ask questions on Caltrans efforts. Please hold your questions if possible, as I know we have limited time here. AB 1282 was passed in late 2017, creating the Multi-Agency Transportation Permitting Task Force. The task force consisted of members from the California Natural Resources Agency, California State Transportation Agency. Can we go to the next? No, this is the right side, sorry. Thank you. California Transportation Agency, California Environmental Protection Agency, and California Transportation Commission. Thank you, Commissioners Inman and Norton, for participating and representing the CTC on the task force. There is a continual desire for increased certainty in the permitting process. Ideally, there would be a common understanding of permit timeframes, project scope, study methodologies, potential impacts, resource avoidance and mitigation measures, and mitigation costs early in the project development cycle. Where early scope assumptions are incorrect, there is potential for cost increases and project delivery delay. To assist with the challenge of permitting certainty, AB 1282 adopts a vision of expediting the delivery of transportation projects while protecting California's natural, historic, and cultural resources. The task force prepared a report to the legislature, which was released in 2020 with recommendations for permitting process improvements. I do have one question on the control of the slides. Are you all seeing the slides? Okay, I'll just say advance, I guess. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the 1282 task force report to the legislature identified 6 primary causes of delay and uncertainty. And these 6 categories included unclear understanding of permit requirements, ineffective early engagement, ineffective project planning and program management, a need for updated procedures, policies, and guidance, increased high workload demand, and uncoordinated design change management. And across all these categories, mitigation is included. So there could be ineffective early engagement on the topic of mitigation. There could be ineffective policies and procedures related to mitigation. Next slide, please. So the last slide focused on some of the challenges, and the reason for some of these challenges is the level of certainty in the process as we move through the process. This graphic has been shared in the past and illustrates the level of certainty over time in the project delivery process. It should be noted that the process will always have some level of uncertainty early in the process. With early engagement, though, we hope to flatten this curve some, increase the level of certainty at the beginning of the project development process. The graphic here shows that when you're at an early PID or P&ED stage, for example, that transition from PID to P&ED, you only have 20% of your design identified. And so there's a lot less information. You may have a sketch of the purpose and need and an idea of the range of alternatives, but all of these are being developed as we move along. So it's important to have an iterative approach with the resource agencies and have check-in points so that as these pieces get developed through the process, there's conversations back and forth so that the design doesn't move ahead too far without having some check-in with the agencies and get some feedback, especially on the more complex projects, which I'll talk about a little more as we move through this presentation. Next slide, please. So to address these challenges, the task force prepared report identified various recommendations to improve permitting processing time, establish reasonable deadlines of permit approvals, and provide for greater certainty of permit approval requirements. So there's 6 recommendation categories. 5 of them are these pillars that you see here on the temple, and then mitigation spans all 5 of the categories there. Within those 5, or actually 6 recommendation categories, there are 39 recommendations that were made as part of the AB 1282 report. And I'm obviously not going to go over all 39 of those. That would take quite a bit of time. But in general, the recommendations focus on improving communication and understanding between Caltrans and permitting agencies, and also between functional units within Caltrans that support project delivery. And constant ongoing communication throughout project delivery sets up a project for success. Of the 39 recommendations, early engagement is a specific recommendation. It was also identified in the legislation, but it is aimed at improving certainty for design and permit conditions. And a good example of where we did have strong early and ongoing engagement was the North Coast Corridor project in the San Diego area. This was a highly complex project bringing together local, regional, state transportation and permitting agencies to address environmental and multimodal transportation needs in the area. The early engagement efforts set the stage for improvements on the coast of San Diego for many years to come. Not every project will need that level of complexity. Engagement processes developed through AB 1282 will take into consideration the scope of the project and aim to achieve a level of engagement commensurate with the complexity of the project. And next slide, please. So focusing a little more on that early engagement piece, as indicated in the last slide, development of structured process for early engagement is a key recommendation from the 1282 task force report. Current early engagement and early coordination with permitting agencies is optional and informal in the early project delivery phases. Formal coordination does not occur until late in the process at the PS&E stage often. So then we do have a greater certainty, but we've missed out on the opportunity to have all that early engagement that could inform things like the actual scope of the project, purpose and need, and range of alternatives. This has resulted in the need for rework and caused some delays. So effective early coordination will be required during the PID stage for certain medium and complex projects moving forward. And it'll be optional for the simpler projects. And the report goes into some more details on some of the potential benefits of and potential cost savings from having that early engagement in the process. And next slide. So advanced mitigation is also a key way to increase certainty in the process. It involves examination of environmental needs during the planning process. It does promote early coordination with resource agencies, and it encourages interagency alignment. There is an annual report to the CTC where Caltrans will continue to report on the benefits of the advanced mitigation program. It should be noted that this is a complex process that requires a lot of planning work ahead of time to save time and dollars for future transportation projects. Next slide. So a key benefit of advanced mitigation is improving the certainty of permit requirements through this early coordination. Regulatory agencies will be made aware of which transportation projects are proposed to use a given mitigation solution early in the planning process. It provides early opportunities for feedback on planned advanced mitigation activities. It is readily available mitigation in combination with early agency coordination should reduce the risk that mitigation will have to be renegotiated at a later point in time. And it's always harder to deal with this at the 11th hour to try to find a mitigation site and enter into all the needed agreements. So the earlier we can do this, the better. Early efforts to ensure alignment reduce the risk that additional redundant mitigation will need to be sought for the transportation projects as well. And the next slide, please. So this has provided a brief overview of where we're at with AB 1282. It doesn't really do justice to all the work that is being done. There's a lot being done by Caltrans and our partner agencies. Water Board, CDFW, and California Coastal Commission are all heavily engaged in this effort. There are additional agency-funded positions at each of the agencies, and those are helping us with our high level of workload. We know there's a large amount of work that's coming to Caltrans and through the process, and so the additional resources are helping with that. And we've also, through this whole process, have better partnerships and better relationships with the agencies. AB 1282 has required that we've had a high level of engagement, and through that we've set up a number of meetings at the state and regional levels to foster greater partnerships and engagement, and I think that has been very helpful. We've been able to advance some efforts, for example, with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We've near an agreement on satisfying their code related to fiscal assurance, and that was an area that we needed to have some better guidance for our project delivery teams, and we're near agreement on that. And I think the relationships through CDFW and AB 1282 have really helped foster that effort. So with that, I'm here for any questions and happy to take on any questions that the commission may have on this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be serving on this task force with you. I want to make sure that people are understanding how remarkable it is that you're looking to scope differently so that we don't have additional changes to projects. We're experiencing that with a couple of major freeway projects where all of a sudden lots of member cities are starting to change scope. What are you going to do as we're talking about equity and sort of the Speak Now process to make sure that we broaden the population that realizes this project is being scoped, but then have some sort of scope discipline so that we can keep the permitting process clear and move forward and budget properly as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the outreach with respect to equity is definitely important, and is something that we're working on at a higher level or a more universal level within Caltrans as well. So not just focused on AB 1282, but yes, definitely as we move through the project delivery process, we need to ensure that we're being inclusive of all communities that may be affected by a project, and the decisions made in collaboration with permitting agencies. The more certainty that we have through our efforts with the permitting agencies, that will help us have better information to share with the public and all the members of the public when we engage with them. So if right now the way the process may occur is we might get some late information from a permitting agency at the PS&E stage, and with that late information there might be some project changes necessary late in the process after the CEQA and NEPA processes have concluded. And unless those are really substantial changes, it may not go back out to the public with the current process. So if we have better information early, then we can have that dialogue earlier in the process, and it can help inform those dialogues that occur during NEPA and CEQA, which has been the typical point in time where we've engaged the public on projects.
Thank you. Justin, do we have any public comment on this item?
Chair Norton, I see no attendee indicating they have a public comment or question at this time.
And I hear nothing from my colleagues. So thank you so much, Mr. Ketchum. I appreciate your time. And we'll move on to the resolutions of necessity presentations. Tim? Great work. Jeremy,
Thanks,
thanks again.
Thanks, Jeremy. Next up, we have Renee Fletcher, the Assistant Division Chief of Right-of-Way and Land Surveys, to talk about the resolutions of necessity. Renee, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Tim. So good morning, Chair Norton and Commissioners. Again, my name is Renee Fletcher. I am the Assistant Division Chief for Right-of-Way and Land Surveys. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to review the property acquisitions and resolution of necessity process. This presentation consists of 12 slides. I also have joining me today Tina Lucas from Design and Jeremy Ketchum from Environmental to assist me with any questions you may have. So let's get started. Next slide, please. So today I'd like to present to you and describe the resolution of necessity process and what CTC must consider in order to approve a resolution, and then what happens before a resolution is requested. I'll share the 4 public interest findings and as described in the Code of Civil Procedure 1245-230, and how they are met through the project development process throughout the life cycle of the project. I'll also touch on community engagement and how property owner engagement in negotiations is essential to seeking the best outcome possible. Next slide, please. So what is a resolution of necessity? A resolution of necessity is a formal document adopted by the CTC that authorizes Caltrans to proceed with property acquisition when an agreement cannot otherwise be negotiated. This is a necessary step before a property owner can seek judicial decision on compensation when a meeting of the minds is not achieved. And then prior to seeking the resolution from the commission, a notice of intent letter is provided to the property owner at least 30 days prior to the scheduled CTC meeting. It describes the 4 findings, the process, and advises the property owner of their rights and responsibilities. Next, please. So I would like to describe the 3 types of resolutions of necessity that come before you during the commission meetings that require your approval. First are those resolutions that are uncontested. And this is where the property owner only contests the amount of just compensation that has been offered. Property owners are not contesting the necessity, design, or need for their property to construct the project. The commission's approval authority does not consider items related to compensation. Those resolutions that are actual physical appearances by the property owner or the representative is the second type of resolution of necessity. The owner is requesting to appear before the commission to object for reasons other than compensation, such as necessity of the project, design, or need for their property. And then the third type is those that are contested by written appearance, the letters that we receive. With these, the owner objects to the same conditions as above in the contested by physical appearance, but does not wish to appear. They only request that their letter be acknowledged to this fact and become a matter of record. Next slide. So the 4 public interest findings. So I'd like to walk you through those. The public interest and necessity require the proposed project. So during the project development process, an environmental review takes place, and ultimately a project report and environmental document are prepared. The project report documents and validates the purpose and need for the project. And depending on the type of environmental document, the alternatives and impacts to properties and the environment are evaluated. Now, public outreach may occur at various forms and times. For projects with multiple alternatives and or multiple impacts to property, information is gathered from the public or agencies of interest at the scoping stage, which is prior to commencing environmental studies, and at the draft environmental document stage, which is after public release and circulation of the environmental document. For these types of complex projects, it's fundamental to the process that public engagement occurs throughout in many ways. Representatives from Caltrans that include the Division of Design, Environmental, and Right-of-Way are available during public workshops, which are open to all, public hearings, in those cases if the project is challenged, and always a public comment period is provided, which allows for engagement with the communities. Next, please. So the second public interest finding, the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. So part of the environmental analysis component, which includes the evaluation of alternatives and includes studies that involve societal considerations to those impacted by the project. These studies document impacts with the goal to avoid or keep to a minimum impacts to people, animals, plant life, and topography. Caltrans civil engineers make effort to develop the design alternatives that minimize impacts to communities, including minimizing physical displacements. For complex projects, the final environmental document includes a recommended preferred alternative and a final relocation impact document to support this finding. By completion of the project report and the environmental document in consultation with and support of the local entities, the Commission reviews, approves, and provides funding for the project components. Next slide. Finding 3, the property described in the resolution of necessity for the proposed project. The resolution process goes on further and requires, prior to making an offer to the property owner, that the licensed civil engineer evaluate the design and property requirements to certify in writing that the project cannot be constructed without the parcel. This is called the certificate of sufficiency. Our appraisal reports cannot be finalized or approved without a signed certificate of sufficiency, and it is included as part of the approved appraisal report. Public interest finding 4. An offer, next slide, please. An offer to purchase the property as required by section 7267.2 of the Government Code has been made to owners of record. An approved fair market value appraisal is prepared and starts with the notice to the property owner of its decision to appraise. The property owners are invited to meet and walk the site with the appraiser during the appraisal inspection. The property owners and tenants are advised of their rights under Title VI, and residential property owners of dwellings up to 4 units are provided with a copy of the appraisal and are offered reimbursement up to $5,000 should they choose to obtain their own independent appraisal report. Okay, next slide, please. So moving on to negotiations. Property owner engagement is part of every property acquisition. These interactions are central to understanding property owners' needs and concerns in order to best address them. Less than 1% of all acquisitions result in property owners contesting a resolution. And that's for fact, that's for from 2018 to June 30th, 2021. Our engagement with the property owner occurs at the very onset of the process and throughout negotiation to ensure that the property owner's needs are met. Those needs can include reducing or modifying acquisition areas with the help of design to avoid or minimize impact to the owner's property. And then when acquisition is not avoidable, we do what we can to make sure relocation and any special considerations are carefully noted to provide the property owner with the maximum benefits possible. A few examples of this would be ADA considerations, upside down mortgages, which we call negative equity, and even workarounds to allow for a harvesting of our crop. So we take a special care to survey for barrier-free options such as lack of stairs, chair lifts, and wheelchair accessible showers that may be needed in replacement dwellings. And then as you recall, in the early 2000s, our economy faced a period where many property owners had upside down mortgages. And this is when property owners owed more on their loans than the property was valued. So Caltrans leveraged the use of a temporary waiver from the Federal Highways Administration to provide the additional funds to pay off loans so they could purchase replacement property without undue hardship. And the last example is in our rural areas with our agricultural property owners, we work to accommodate special requests, such as the harvesting of a crop before a close of escrow. Again, those are just a couple different examples of the special considerations that we try to assist with the property owner. Next, please. So now we'll move on to that physical appearance. There are times when even through negotiations, we are unable to reach agreement with the property owner and move to seek a resolution of necessity from the commission in order to proceed with the acquisition. So once we receive the owner's request to appear, 3 levels of review are initiated. We make our best effort to resolve the concerns at the lowest level possible to minimize the burden on the property owner. When this is not possible, this 3-level review process allows for an internal means of escalation to ensure property owners' concerns are comprehensively considered. And these reviews are all made up of multidisciplinary teams at each level. The first level is the district evaluation meeting, and this is the district director's formal meeting with the property owner to look for opportunities for mutual resolution. An example of this may be widening of a driveway, reducing the area of a temporary construction easement. At the end, a fact and appearance information sheet is prepared. Then we would move on to the second review, which is headquarters and design review meeting. This offers the same opportunities with additional members from headquarters. The review is another opportunity to assure the property owner's issues have been considered and responded to in an orderly manner. A panel report is prepared to be approved by the chief engineer. And then the next level is the executive and CTC staff review. And this review is conducted by executive and CTC staff to evaluate the information and preview the PowerPoint that will be presented before the commission. This review of the project and its impact to the property owners is to jointly assess with CTC staff the owner's concerns in relation to the 4 findings. All 3 reviews are conducted prior to submitting any request for a resolution to the commission. Next slide. And finally, we have the written appearance. A property owner and/or the property owner's legal counsel submits a letter to the commission objecting to the proposed resolution in writing, but confirms with the department that they're not requesting a physical or now virtual appearance before the CTC. And in lieu of the review meetings, the letter is acknowledged and made part of the record with the panel report. And finally, there is no formal appearances before the commission. Next. So I know that was short, but that concludes my presentation. And again, we have Tina Lucas from Design and Jeremy Ketchum from Environmental, and myself here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've put into this and the AB 1282 work. I wanted to make sure that we found out whether or not we have any public comment on this item. So Justin?
Chair Norton, I see no public comment at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'm going to open the comments to my colleagues. Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Can we go to the slide that was public interest finding number 2? I want to get some clarification about something. It's come up in meetings, and this is a good time to discuss it if we have the time to do it. And it's just, I think I want to make sure I'm on the same page with how you interpret this requirement and how I've been interpreting this requirement when we take up these items. And I think there might be a difference because my interpretation of the least private injury clause of this has been sort of operational specific to how the project is implemented. And meaning, for example, if there was something that we could do while actually moving forward with the project that would minimize the private injury to the property owner, we should incorporate that into what we're doing. But the way that it's interpreted, sometimes it appears to me to be more about project level, yes or no. Is this project in the greatest, for the greatest public good, right? And is it, you know, if we do this, will the public benefit? And it doesn't seem to me that there's always a focus on how we can sort of minimize impacts, not during the design of the alternatives necessarily, like how we could change the project, but once we've selected the project, how we actually do it. And I'm not sure I'm being clear about this, but it just like I might be on a little bit of interpreting it a little bit differently than you are. Does that make sense?
So yes, it does. And thank you for that question or request for clarification. You know what? It's both, actually. We, you know, in the early stages of project development, you know, through the environmental analysis process, we do relocation studies. We take a look at all the impacts to the overall project. And there is a level of least private injury when you look at the project level. But then when you dial down to actual, you know, the alternative selected, and now we're impacting the individual parcels, we always strive to do the best we can to minimize that impact. And that's where our negotiations come in, because it's not uncommon where we will go in with a design and you know, the property owner, I mean, it's their property, and they know things about it that maybe the appraiser didn't see. And so we always strive to make modifications to design where we can. That's where the communication with design comes in through the negotiation. We can reduce the temporary construction easement areas. We can reduce, you know, 10 feet off over here. So it's really a combination that we definitely want the least private injury, and that is through collaboration and communication with the property owner. So I think you're right. I think it's both.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful to know. And sometimes, you know, the least private injury means added cost to us, and I think we have to accept that, right? That maybe we have to work at night, or we have to move or store equipment someplace that's not as convenient as it would be otherwise, or things like that. And
sure.
And you know, since it's a taking, I think we need to be as careful as possible to really, you know, do that least private injury part of it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was a great observation, Commissioner Liu. Colleagues, do you have any other questions on this item? With that, I am very pleased to have had this additional exploration, as we have a number of resolutions of necessity before us. This very much helps the public to understand, as well as our new commissioners. So I thank you for that in-depth review. Tim, we're going to have you do the commission wrap up, because I think we're going to not be able to get the alternative delivery methods presentation. We're not going to be able to do it justice in the remaining time. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I recommend that we defer the last topic till the next project delivery workshop. I don't want to rush through the importance and all the hard work that was put into developing a presentation for alternative delivery methods.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I would recommend that. And I'd also like to just express my appreciation to Caltrans and the other participants for all the extra work they put in to deliver these presentations. This is an extra thing that we asked of them, and they've done a really good job.
Absolutely. Thank you. Wonderful wrap up. And we do want to thank our partner, Caltrans. It is extraordinary to see the ways in which you are really digging deep into the analysis of how to deliver great projects and great safety. So we thank you for this time. With that, Justin, is there any other public comment?
Chair Norton, I don't see any attendees indicating they wish to make public comment at this time. Thank you.
Okay, with that, colleagues, this workshop is adjourned. We will come back to our CTC meeting for first day at noon today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.